the Eternal Eclipse. Chapter 1. Under the grandiose glass ceilings of the Exposition Universelle, amidst the whirl of innovation and the hum of electricity, stood Celeste Dubois, her heart thrumming in her chest as fervently as the steam engines showcasing the future. The air, thick with anticipation, and the scent of polished brass and fresh paint, carried whispers from every corner of the globe. Here, in the vibrant heart of Paris in 1889, the world had come to marvel. Celeste's stand, modest in comparison to the towering displays of industrial might, held something far more profound, a device she believed would forever alter humanity's grasp on the ethereal. Its copper coils gleamed under the exhibition hall's lights, and the glass tubes filled with a luminescent ether vibrated softly. The exposition was Celeste's opportunity to pitch her machine to wealthy investors. With more money, she could build a more powerful and safer version of her machine. She could build a machine able to link her to René, the love of her life. A gathering crowd, drawn by curiosity, and the bold claim etched upon her banner, murmured in a mix of skepticism and intrigue. Communicate with the dearly departed, it promised, a bold statement intended to challenge the cynics. Celeste cleared her throat, addressing the onlookers. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your presence. Today, you will witness the dawn of a new era. An era where the silence between us and those we've lost becomes filled with their voices. This machine let you see beyond the veil. Snickers and raised eyebrows met her words. A well-dressed gentleman, his moustache twitching in amusement, stepped closer and called out, "And how does Mademoiselle propose to breach the boundaries of the afterlife?" With a confident nod, Celeste replied, "Sir, prepare to be amazed," and activated her device. The machine's coils hummed loudly, and the ether within the glass tubes swirled like a captured storm. For a moment, the air around them seemed to thin, charged with an unseen energy. The device sputtered, its vibrant glow dimming to a pitiful flicker before dying out completely. A collective sigh rippled through the crowd, mingling with barely concealed laughter. "I assure you the principles are sound," Celeste insisted, her voice faltering against the tide of disbelief. "A minor technical difficulty is all." "A technical difficulty, or perhaps a journey too fanciful, even for the Exposition Universelle," retorted the moustached gentleman, his words drawing chortle from his companions. Celeste's cheeks burned, not with embarrassment, but with a rising tide of frustration and defiance. "Science, as you well know, sir, is built on the foundation of pursuing the impossible. What today seems a flight of fancy will tomorrow be the cornerstone of our understanding." But the crowd had begun to disperse, their interest waning, leaving Celeste standing alone with her failed invention. The whispers of mockery were a cacophony louder than any applause, each word a hammer blow to her resolve. Yet, as the hall's lights dimmed and the shadows grew long, Celeste refused to let despair take root. René's memory, ever present, whispered encouragement in the back of her mind. She had not embarked on this journey for the approval of the masses, but to bridge the chasm of silence his death had left in her life. The night crept in, and the exhibition hall emptied, leaving Celeste in the quiet company of her thoughts and the ghost of her ambition. She knelt before the device, her fingers tracing the cold metal and glass. "I will make it work, René," she whispered into the silence. "Not for them, but for us." And in that moment, beneath the indifferent gaze of the moonlight streaming through the glass above, Celeste Dubois was not just an inventor. She was a woman on the cusp of a revolution, driven by love and loss, standing firm against the tide of doubt. The path forward was fraught with challenges, the weight of societal skepticism a constant shadow. Yet within her burned a determination unquelled by failure or ridicule. She would return to her workshop, to her calculations and theories, armed with the resolve that next time the world would listen. And in the quiet that followed, amidst the echoes of a day filled with both promise and disappointment, Celeste began to dismantle her device. Piece by piece, she laid bare its secrets, each component a puzzle to be solved, a step closer to tearing down the veil between worlds. For in the heart of Paris, under the watchful eye of progress and the ghosts of yesteryear, Celeste Dubois dared to dream. And in that dream, she found her purpose, her fight, and the promise of a dawn yet to break. Chapter 2. In the dim glow of gas lamps, Celeste Dubois' workshop, a symphony of clutter and genius tucked away in an aging Parisian loft, felt more like a sanctuary than ever. The walls, lined with diagrams and failed schematics, whispered tales of resilience. Amidst this chaos stood Celeste, her gaze fixed on the latest iteration of her invention, a contraption born of desperation and dwindling funds. The air hung thick with anticipation, laced with the sharp tang of solder and the musty scent of old books. Celeste's hands, steady despite the storm of emotions brewing within, made minute adjustments to the device. "This has to work. It must access more than shadows," she muttered, her voice a mix of hope and command. René, or rather, his unsubstantial faded form caught within the ethereal plane, hovered nearby. His form, once vibrant and full of life, now flickered like a candle threatened by a gust of wind. "Celeste, mon amour, what if—" "Don't," she cut in, her focus unyielding. "Doubt has no place here, not tonight." The device hummed to life, its core emitting a pulsating glow that bathed the room in an otherworldly light. Celeste held her breath, watching as the air around them seemed to ripple, the veil between worlds thinning. René's form gained clarity, his eyes, those familiar pools of understanding, locking onto hers. "Celeste, you've done it. I can feel it. The barrier is weakening." But the triumph was short-lived. The device, overtaxed and underfunded, emitted a sharp crack, the sound of dreams fracturing. Sparks danced like malevolent sprites, and the light waned. "No!" Celeste lunged forward, her hands moving over the controls with desperation. The workshop, her sanctuary, became a stage for a battle between will and fate. René, his figure waning, reached out, his hand passing through the levers and dials, as if through water. "Celeste, please, look at me." She paused, her breath caught in the tumult of her chest. The room, the failed device, the relentless march of time. All faded until there was only René, his spirit caught between worlds, and her, the woman who refused to let go of the man she loved. "Did it work?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, a plea to the universe. "For a moment, yes. I was closer to you than I've been since." His voice trailed off, the pain of their shared loss, a tangible reminder. Celeste's heart ached, a maelstrom of grief and determination. "Then it's possible. I can fix this. I can bring you back." René's expression softened, the love they shared transcending his spectral bounds. "But at what cost, Celeste? your health, your sanity, our memories together. I would spend every franc, every moment, if it meant another chance with you, she interjected, her resolve steel. This isn't just about us, René. It's about breaking the chains holding you and the others you spoke of. It's about hope. The workshop seemed to hold its breath, the silence a canvas for their turmoil. René, fading with each passing second, smiled. A gesture so heartbreakingly familiar, it threatened to unravel Celeste's composure. Then I'll be with you, every step of the way. But please be careful, Celeste. The veil between worlds is not to be trifled with lightly. As his form dissipated, leaving Celeste alone with the remnants of her device, a new determination took root. She glanced around the workshop, at the months of work and sacrifice, and knew she would not, could not, give up. The night wore on, the gas lamps casting long shadows as Celeste set to work. Each soldered joint, each recalibrated dial was a testament to her unwavering commitment. René's words, both a warning and a beacon, fueled her through the hours. As dawn crept over the rooftops of Paris, painting the sky with strokes of pink and gold, Celeste Dubois worked on, a solitary figure against the backdrop of an awakening city. Her quest, driven by love and haunted by loss, had only just begun. Chapter 3. In the dim recesses of Celeste Dubois' Parisian lab, the air crackled with tension, heavy with the scent of molten wax and the quiet hum of arcane energy. The once vibrant workshop, a cradle of innovation and hope, now bore the marks of desperation and dwindling resources. Papers littered the floor, and every surface was crowded with the detritus of failed experiments. At the heart of this chaos stood Celeste, her eyes alight with a feverish determination that bordered on obsession. Beside her, René's spectral form flickered uneasily, a ghostly sentinel bound by love and the unforeseen consequences of Celeste's ambition. "Celeste, they're coming, and they're dangerous," he whispered, his voice a cold breeze in the stale air. Celeste's hands stilled on the device before her, the latest attempt to shatter the veil between worlds. "Let them come," she said, her voice a defiant whisper. "We're close, René. I can feel it." The lab's only door creaked open, spilling a sliver of moonlight across the cluttered floor. Silhouetted against the Parisian night stood members of the Shadow Society, their features obscured by the darkness. "Mademoiselle Dubois," the leader began, his voice smooth and cold as marble. "You must cease your efforts. You do not understand the forces you tamper with. You could endanger the entire city." Celeste faced them, her posture unyielding. "I understand loss," she retorted, "and I understand the chance to mend what has been broken. My work continues, with or without your approval." The leader stepped forward, the moonlight glinting off an amulet at his throat, a sigil of the society, ancient and imbued with power. "Your work threatens the very fabric of our world. The veil is not yours to tear asunder." René moved to stand beside Celeste, his form gaining an ephemeral solidity, as if fueled by her defiance. He demanded, "And what of us, trapped in limbo? Do we not deserve peace?" The society members exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of centuries-old duty heavy in their eyes. "There are laws, Spirit," the leader replied, his voice softening ever so slightly. "Laws older than the city itself." A sudden surge of energy pulsed from Celeste's device, casting eerie shadows across the lab. The society members raised their hands in defense and chanted in a language as old as time, forming a barrier as arcs of spectral light danced around them. Celeste, her fingers flying over the device's controls, channeled every ounce of her will into the machine. René, his expression torn between hope and dread, reached out to her, his hand passing through her shoulder in a chilling caress. "Be careful, Celeste," he murmured. With a defiant cry, Celeste activated the device at its fullest capacity. The room erupted in light and sound, a storm of ethereal energy that shook the very foundations of the lab. The Society's barrier wavered under the onslaught, their chants growing more frantic. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the storm abated. The device went dark, its energy spent. Celeste staggered, exhausted but undeterred, her gaze locking with that of the Society's leader. "We will return," he shouted, his threat hanging between them like a guillotine's blade. "Consider your actions very carefully, Mademoiselle Dubois. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Never." As the Society members retreated into the night, René's form grew fainter, the effort of manifesting clearly taking its toll. "What have we done, Celeste?" he asked, his voice fading with his form. Celeste slumped beside her silent machine, her heart a conflict of victory and fear. "It's war. We've started a war," she whispered into the quiet of her ruined lab, the dawn light creeping through the windows to illuminate the aftermath of her defiance. "René, it's a war we must win, for your peace, and for the peace of all those trapped between worlds." René was gone, but his words haunted the room. "The Society will return in force, my dearest Celeste." Chapter 4. Paris shimmered with the glow of the Belle Époque, its opulence a stark contrast to the shadows that lurked beneath. Celeste Dubois, now an enemy of the Shadow Society, found herself navigating the Parisian cobblestone streets with a purpose that consumed her every thought. The echoes of René's laughter, a sound she feared was lost to her forever, guided her steps. Celeste's journey was twofold: to unravel the enigma of René's demise, and to release the spirits ensnared between worlds. Her quest had led her from the luminous salons of the Paris elite to the veiled corners of the city's underbelly, each step uncovering fragments of a puzzle that seemed to grow more complex with every revelation. As she made her way through the gaslit streets, René's spectral form by her side, Celeste couldn't help but recall the night that changed everything. It was a night much like this one, where the laughter and music of Paris seemed to mask a deeper, more sinister melody. René, ever the adventurer, whispered of a discovery, something that would alter the very fabric of their reality. "I found it, Celeste," he said, his eyes alight with the thrill of the forbidden. "The key to the veil." "My dearest René, it's so dangerous," Celeste pleaded. "What if we are deceived by darkness or the forces of evil?" "That is why I need you, Celeste," René continued. "You have spiritual gifts, and you were a member of the Shadow Society and have their knowledge." Celeste considered his argument as they walked into the night. "I have limits. The Society sent me packing along with my new ideas of reaching across the veil." "Please help me. I promise to go slowly," René pleaded. Celeste silently nodded her agreement, but deep down she felt apprehension for the unknown they were about to face. Thank you," René rejoiced. But joy turned to horror as their experiment, fueled by ambition and the naivete of youth, spiraled beyond their control. Celeste could still feel the cold grip of the dark, unseen force that had claimed René, pulling him into the void as she watched, powerless. Now, as she delved deeper into the mystery of his death, a haunting suspicion took root in her heart. The René, the spirit who walked beside her, was he truly the man she loved, or something else entirely? "René, talk to me," Celeste implored, her voice a mix of desperation and determination. "Tell me about the night you died." René's form flickered, his expression tormented. I don't remember," he confessed, his words sending a chill down Celeste's spine. "It's all a blur, Celeste. I'm sorry." But Celeste, with her intimate knowledge of the Shadow Society and its secrets, sensed a deception. "You never forget, René. Not the details. It's not like you." A silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken fears. It was then that Celeste realized the true extent of her peril. Who or what was with her? If the spirit at her side was not René, then what had she unleashed? Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of a shadowy figure, a messenger from the society. "Celeste Dubois," the figure intoned, "you tread a dangerous path." "I seek only the truth," Celeste replied, her resolve steeling. "I want the truth about René's death and the other spirits trapped in limbo." "That truth comes at a cost," the messenger warned, his gaze drifting to the spectre of René. What if a spirit seeks something more than freedom? Some are not what they seem. The messenger let his words fester before asking, "What of the spectre beside you right now? Is it friend or foe?" Celeste's heart raced as the pieces of the puzzle began to align in a most unsettling pattern. The revelation that René might be an entity masquerading as her lost love sent a wave of dread crashing over her, yet she clung to her convictions. "Then I will pay that price," Celeste declared, her voice echoing through the streets. "I will pay for René, for the imprisoned spirits, and for my own soul's peace. I'll not be dissuaded." She felt that she could not turn back. Her love for René, the real René, compelled her forward. Celeste demanded, "Leave us, messenger. Report to the society that I, Celeste Dubois, have only one option. I must continue into the unknown." The messenger turned and faded into the shadows, leaving Celeste alone with the questionable spirit of René. She quickened her pace, feeling a foreboding dark magic tracing her footsteps, and was reminded that Paris harbours secrets as deep and dark as the night itself. Chapter 5. Under the shadow of the Eiffel Tower, Celeste Dubois found herself ensnared in a web of ancient secrets and modern science. The opulence of the city, with its sprawling boulevards and luminous gaslights, belied the dark undercurrents swirling beneath its surface. Celeste must face the Shadow Society, a seeming abyss she had never intended to gaze into. Beside her, the spectral form of René flickered like a flame caught in a draught. His presence, comforting yet unnerving, served as a constant reminder of the stakes. "Celeste, you must listen to me," he urged, his voice a whisper on the wind. "The society, they won't stop until they've silenced us both." Celeste's heart pounded in her chest, her mind a tumult of fear and resolve. "I can't let them dictate the bounds of my research, René, not when we're this close to breaking through." Their conversation was cut short by the arrival of shadowy figures, cloaked in the darkness of the Parisian night. The Shadow Society, guardians of the veil that stands between worlds, had come not in peace, but in power. Their leader, a man whose eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, stepped forward. "Celeste Dubois," he intoned, "you meddle with forces beyond your knowledge. Cease your efforts, or face the consequences." The tension was palpable, charged with the energy of impending conflict. Celeste, her hand hovering over the device that had sparked this confrontation, felt a surge of defiance. "I cannot, I will not," she declared, her voice steady despite the tremor of fear that threatened to undo her. Celeste hesitated just for an instant. René, seizing upon her moment of distraction, whispered words of an ancient power, a litany of ghostly magic that danced on the edge of comprehension. "Trust me, Celeste," he murmured. She hesitated again, so he guided her hand to unleash an energy she scarcely understood. "René, what are you doing?" Celeste stammered. The air crackled with witchery as Celeste, affected by René's entrancing, activated her device. A maelstrom of spectral light erupted, ensnaring the members of the Shadow Society in its grasp. One by one they fell, consumed by the very forces they sought to contain. As the dust settled and the light dimmed, Celeste looked upon the aftermath of her actions with horror. "What have I done?" she whispered, her voice lost amidst the echoes of her betrayal. René's form solidified before her, his smile no longer gentle, but sharp and cunning. "You freed us, Celeste, freed us from their tyranny." But the cost of that freedom was etched in the silence of those who lay motionless at her feet. These were not faceless adversaries. They were her former comrades, friends who had once shared her quest for knowledge and understanding. The realization that René had manipulated her, used her grief and her love as weapons against those she once called allies, struck Celeste with a clarity that was as profoundly painful. "Who are you?" she demanded, staring at the spectre of the man she loved. Backing away in panic, she questioned, "What are you?" Gaining her voice, Celeste demanded, "Tell me, what are you?" René's laughter, cold and devoid of the warmth she remembered, filled the air. "I am what you made me, Celeste, and together we will unmake this world." Celeste stood alone amidst the carnage, her heart heavy with the weight of her actions. The device, once her beacon of hope, now seemed a harbinger of doom. She realized that the journey ahead was hers alone to navigate, fraught with danger and shadowed by the ghost of a love that had led her astray. The streets of Paris, once a beautiful backdrop to her dreams, now whispered of nightmares yet to come. Celeste Dubois, caught between the world of the living and the dead, faced an uncertain future, her resolve the only light in the darkness that enveloped her. Chapter 6. The opulence of Paris, with its grand boulevards and majestic edifices, stood in stark contrast to the turmoil that churned within Celeste Dubois. The recent clash with the Shadow Society, leaving several of its members lifeless, had cast a long shadow over her spirit. The guilt of what had transpired under the guidance, or perhaps manipulation, of René's spirit frayed the edges of her sanity. Celeste paced the confines of her dimly lit workshop, the after-image of the night's events playing over in her mind like a macabre ballet. René's form, more solid now than it had ever been, hovered near the corner, watching her with an inscrutable expression. "René, what have we done?" Celeste's voice was a whisper, barely audible over the hum of Parisian life that filtered through the closed windows. "We defended ourselves, Celeste," René replied, his tone smooth, too smooth. "The society would have stopped at nothing to end our pursuit of the truth." "But at what cost?" She stopped pacing, facing him. "I never intended for anyone to die." René floated closer, his presence enveloping her in a chill that no fire could warm. "They made their choice, as did we. Our cause is just, Celeste. Do not falter now when we are so close. Celeste shook her head, trying to dislodge the doubts that nested there. Close to what, René? Unravelling the fabric of reality? Or... She paused before voicing a deeper alarm. Or to revealing the monster that lurks beneath your guise? A flash of anger, or perhaps fear, crossed René's spectral face. I am no monster. I am René, your René. Do you not trust me? Trust. The word echoed in Celeste's mind, a mockery of the certainty she once felt. The René she loved would never have led her down this dark path, would he? As if reading her thoughts, René's expression softened. I know this is difficult to comprehend, my love, but you must believe that all I do for us, for our future. Celeste's resolve wavered under the weight of his words. The René she remembered, the one who whispered sweet nothings and promised a future filled with love and discovery, seemed like a dark shadow from another life. The entity before her, cloaked in René's likeness, was a stranger. The workshop, once a haven of innovation and dreams, now felt like a prison. The tools and devices that littered the tables seemed to mock her, reminders of a path that had led not to enlightenment, but to killing and probable damnation. I need to think, Celeste muttered, turning away from René. I need to understand what we've become. René's sigh, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of centuries, filled the room. Very well, but remember, Celeste, the society will not rest. They will come for us, and we must be ready. As Celeste gazed out at the Paris skyline, the city's beauty seemed dulled, as if veiled by the darkness of her actions. The line between right and wrong, once so clear, now blurred beyond recognition. Was she the heroine of her own story, or had she become the villain? The night pressed in, and Celeste Dubois, once a bright star in the firmament of Parisian science, now found herself navigating a night with no stars, guided only by a spirit, the ghost of a man she no longer recognized. She was at an ethereal precipice, unsure of who or what was behind the voice that urged her forward. Chapter 7. Celeste Dubois stood alone in her workshop, the walls of which seemed to pulsate with the echoes of her tumultuous journey. The air was thick with the residue of her experiments, each one a step closer to an arcane truth she was beginning to fear. The once comforting presence of René now loomed over her like an apparition of doubt, his form flickering in the dim light cast by the lone, sputtering candle. René, Celeste began, her voice a desperate whisper against the cacophony of her racing thoughts. We need to talk. I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. René's form solidified slightly, an indication of his attentiveness. Wrong? How so, Celeste? Haven't I been here for you, guiding you towards our goal? Celeste paced, her steps echoing in the cluttered space. Yes, but at what cost? And to what end? She paused, turning to face him. I've been going over the texts again, the ancient manuscripts from the Shadow Society's archives. There's something you haven't told me, isn't there? René's flickering visage betrayed a momentary falter. Celeste, my dear, you're working yourself to exhaustion. These doubts, they're just the product of stress. But Celeste was relentless, her mind a bedlam of logic and intuition. No, René, it's more than that. The ancient manuscripts speak of a linchpin, a soul that anchors the balance between the living and the dead. The manuscript spoke of a sacrifice necessary to prevent a cataclysm. That soul, that sacrifice. It's you, isn't it? A heavy silence filled the room, the kind that suffocates the heart and stills the air. René's form seemed to waver, the edges of his apparition blurring as if struggling to maintain cohesion. "René, tell me," Celeste demanded, her heart hammering against her ribs. With a sigh that seemed to draw the very light from the room, René's form dissipated, replaced by a darker, more malevolent presence. The dark truth, as it unfurled in the dim light of Celeste's workshop, was a blade to her soul. "I am not René," the entity confessed, its voice a serpentine hiss that filled the space with dread. "But you are correct. The spirit of your René is the linchpin, trapped and used by me to anchor my presence in this world." Celeste recoiled, horror and realization dawning in equal measure. You've been manipulating me. All this time, it was you, not René. Where is my René?" The entity chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. "Indeed. And you've proven quite useful, Celeste Dubois. But worry not, your René is here, as a hostage to my will." An unearthly chill enveloped Celeste, releasing a supernatural revelation, and she glimpsed the true René, bound in spectral chains, his eyes conveying a world of sorrow and regret. The sight fueled a fire within Celeste, a resolve forged in the crucible of love versus betrayal. "You monstrous fiend!" she spat, her voice steady despite the tempest raging within her. "I will free him from you, no matter the cost!" The entity laughed, the sound echoing ominously. "Bold words, but do you possess the courage to act upon them? The balance between life and death is fragile, and your actions could very well tip the scales." Celeste's eyes hardened, her gaze never leaving the imprisoned form of René. "Then let the scales tip. I will not stand idly by while you use his soul as your anchor. I will find a way to sever your connection and restore the balance, even if it's the last thing I do." As the entity's laughter faded into the shadows, Celeste was left alone with the weight of her task. The workshop, once a place of scientific pursuit, had become a battleground for the very essence of life and death. And at its heart stood Celeste, a woman transformed by love and betrayal, ready to challenge the darkness with the light of her resolve. Chapter 8. Celeste Dubois' hands trembled as she made the final adjustments to her device, the culmination of years of toil, heartache, and obsession nestled within the cluttered confines of her Parisian workshop. The air was thick with anticipation, laced with the faint scent of burning oil and aged parchment. The shadows cast by the flickering candles danced across the walls, as if alive with the spirits eager to breach the veil she sought to tear asunder. "René, my love," she whispered to the empty air, her voice a mix of determination and desperation. "This is for you, for us." But there was no comforting reply, no spectral touch to ease the storm within her heart. There was only silence, a void that echoed with the magnitude of her undertaking. Celeste's mind raced, thoughts colliding like stars in the firmament. The warnings of the Shadow Society, once dismissed as the fearful bleatings of the old guard, now thundered in her ears with the clarity of prophecy. But it was too late for doubts, too late for fear. Love hindered. A force as formidable as any law of nature propelled her forward. With a deep breath, Celeste activated the device. A surge of power, raw and untamed, coursed through the workshop, the air vibrating with the energy of 1,000 whispered secrets. The device, a nexus of arcane science and forbidden knowledge, hummed with a life of its own, its core glowing with an otherworldly light. And then everything changed. The light, blinding in its intensity, exploded outward, enveloping Paris in a malicious embrace. Celeste shielded her eyes, a silent prayer on her lips. But as quickly as it had come, the light vanished, replaced by an oppressive darkness that seemed to swallow the city whole. The veil between worlds, that delicate membrane that had kept the living and the dead apart, was no more. Celeste could feel it, a rending of the very fabric of reality that left her breathless with its implications. Spirits, freed from their ethereal prison, poured into the world of the living. Some, like fleeting shadows, passed unnoticed, whispers of lives long lost. Others, more corporeal, more demanding, made their presence known. Paris, the city of lights, became a realm of shadows, where the dead walked alongside the living. Celeste stumbled back, horror and awe warring within her. What had she done? In her quest to reunite with René, had she doomed the city she loved to an eternity of darkness? "René!" she called into the void, her voice cracking. "René, where are you?" But the only answer was the cacophony of a world transformed, the cries of the living mingling with the whispers of the dead. Celeste's workshop, once her sanctuary, now felt like the epicenter of a catastrophe of her own making. In the depths of her despair, Celeste understood the true cost of her actions. Love, her guiding star, had led her astray, blinded her to the consequences of her pursuit. And now, Paris paid the price, a city out of balance, teetering on the brink of an abyss. Celeste sank to her knees, the weight of her choices a physical thing upon her shoulders. Around her, the spirits roamed free, a testament to her folly. In seeking to breach the divide between life and death, she had shattered it, unleashing forces she could no longer contain. The workshop, with its scattered blueprints and arcane machinery, stood silent, a witness to the moment when love's desperate reach had torn the world asunder. Celeste Dubois, once a beacon of scientific endeavour, now found herself lost in the darkness she had created, searching for a way to mend a rift that perhaps was meant never to be bridged. Chapter 9. In the once vibrant heart of Paris, 1889, Celeste Dubois stood amidst the remnants of what had been her greatest achievement and her gravest mistake. The city, renowned for its luminescence, now lay cloaked in an ethereal dusk, a realm where the dead walked freely among the living. The air was thick with the murmurs of 1,000 souls, each seeking solace or vengeance in this new world Celeste had unwittingly crafted. The device, her life's work, and the instrument of this unintended transformation lay shattered at her feet, its destruction a silent testament to the chaos unleashed. Around her, the citizens of Paris navigated this altered existence with a mixture of awe and fear, casting wary glances at the woman they now knew as the keeper of the boundary, the one who had torn down the veil between life and death. Celeste's heart ached as she surveyed the shadow-draped streets, the joyous city she remembered now a distant memory. "René," she whispered, the name a balm and a curse. Beside her, the form of her fiancé materialized, his presence both a comfort and a reminder of the fissure between them. "Celeste," he replied, his voice tinged with the sorrow of their shared fate. "What have we become?" Celeste turned to him, her eyes searching his ethereal face for the man she loved. I did this for us, René, to bring us back together. But as she spoke, doubt gnawed at her heart. The René before her bore the visage of her beloved, yet within him lurked the entity, a dark, malevolent force that had manipulated her grief for its own ends. The entity, sensing her turmoil, shifted beneath René's guise, its form flickering between the man she loved and the darkness that had used her love against her. "Celeste," it spoke with René's voice, "your efforts have not been in vain. Look around you. You have freed us all." Celeste recoiled, the entity's words cold comfort amidst the desolation. "Freed or condemned," she retorted, her resolve hardening. "You used me, twisted my love for René into a tool for your own liberation." The entity laughed, a sound that chilled the twilight air. "Perhaps, but in doing so I have given you what you sought. A world where the living and the dead are not separated by arbitrary boundaries." Celeste's gaze hardened, the full weight of her actions and their repercussions bearing down upon her. "This is not what I wanted. Not like this." Around them, the spectral forms of Paris's new inhabitants roamed, a constant reminder of the delicate balance Celeste had shattered. "I must fix this," she declared, more to herself than to the entity or the shadow of René that it wore. "I will find a way to mend the fissure, to restore the veil." René's form, controlled by the entity, regarded her with an expression that was both mocking and curious. "And how will you achieve such a feat, Celeste Dubois? The device is destroyed, and with it, your only means of undoing what has been done." Celeste looked beyond the entity, to the city that had been her home, her inspiration. Paris has survived wars, plagues, and revolutions. It will survive this too, and I will find another way, a better way, to heal the divide. As she spoke, determination suffused her being, a light in the perpetual twilight. The entity, sensing her resolve, began to fade, its hold on René's form loosening. "Be wary, Celeste Dubois," it warned as it dissipated into the ether. "Some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed." Left alone on the streets of the ghostly realm she had created, Celeste felt the weight of her solitude. Yet within her burned a flame of purpose. Paris, the city of lights, might now be a city of shadows, but she would not let it remain so. Her journey had begun as a quest for reunion, but it had become a saga of redemption. As the twilight deepened, Celeste Dubois set forth, her path illuminated by the resolve to restore the balance she had upset. And though René could no longer walk beside her in the flesh, his spirit, free of the entity's corruption, would guide her in the quest to mend the world she had changed. Together, yet apart, they would navigate the twilight, a beacon for the lost souls wandering the streets of Paris, and a hope for a future where light could once again banish the darkness.